Let me congratulate all of you watching this video on your achievement, which has led you to earning government sponsorship to tertiary education. Value and treasure this opportunity you have been given, particularly at a time when resources are scarce, and get the maximum benefit out of it. The primary purpose of this video is to inform and guide all first-year students who are on government sponsorship. What should you expect from Botswana government being your sponsor? And what does Botswana government expect from you? We are going to try and answer those questions for you. The sponsor is committed to meet his part of the deal. Your sponsorship by Botswana government is through the Ministry of Education and Skills Development and is managed by the Department of Tertiary Education Financing, DTEF. DTEF operates within the overall objective of the Ministry of Education and Skills Development, which is to train all students for useful and productive lives, with an emphasis of training to meet the human resource needs of our economy. The mandate of DTEF is to train and provide sponsorship for pre-service, post-secondary education up to first degree. And DTEF will specifically be responsible for the following. 1. Ensuring that you have signed an agreement with Botswana government on the terms of your sponsorship. 2. Paying your tuition and allowances where applicable. 3. Taking care of your welfare issues, and of paramount importance, your academic welfare. And finally, DTEF will be responsible for following you up to repay your education loan as soon as you complete your training. Within DTEF, there are 5 units which will be serving your needs during your training. These are: 1. The placement unit, which is responsible for processing your sponsorship applications and also getting you to sign the agreement forms. 2. The monitoring and evaluation unit, which is responsible for your welfare and particularly responsible for your academic progress. 3. We have also the disbursement unit, which will be paying your tuition to institutions and also paying your allowances. 4. We also have the recovery unit, which will collect loans from all beneficiaries, from all of you, as soon as you complete your studies. And finally, we have the publicity unit, which forms a communication link between the students and the public and also the department, DTEF.
My name is Itzel Letolo. I work as a monitoring and evaluation officer. As part of our mandate, we are responsible for monitoring the students' academic and social well-being in different institutions, locally and externally. In our unit, we have different officers whom we call desk officers. These are the first contact persons as you come to our department for academic and social well-being. We are going to look at the obligations of the student. The signed loan agreement between the government and the student have obligations that both the parties are supposed to keep. Contractual obligations. Let's look at the obligations by both the parties. Obligations of the government. The government shall pay or cause to be paid to the local or external institutions, and for the account of the student, the tuition costs for the program of study. The student, the maintenance costs, which include a personal allowance determined by the government from time to time. The student's insurance cover, where such is a requirement in undertaking internship or industrial attachment. This will be applicable where the internship or industrial is part fulfillment of the degree program. The government shall not pay nor be responsible for costs and other expenses arising out of or incurred in connection with any of the following: medical expenses incurred by the student studying in local institutions, as these are covered by the local public health system; medical and any other cost arising from and or associated with pregnancy, including without any limitations prenatal, natal and postnatal costs; medical, legal or any cost arising out of circumstances connected with cases of misconduct, which include unacceptable behavior of students as determined by the government, and the travel cost to other countries other than the country of study for research or data collection purposes. Obligation of the student: completion of the program of study. The student shall study diligently to complete the program of study within the time prescribed for such program of study. Set for any or all examination required to be undertaken in connection with the program of study at the prescribed time. Where he or she is prevented from sitting for examinations or completing the program of study due to illness, furnish the government with medical evidence to that effect from recognized medical practitioner within 14 days of the beginning of the illness, with a supporting letter from the institution. Complied all times with the rules of the institution in every respect. Not change the program of study in any respect whatsoever, unless otherwise authorized to do so by the government in writing. And not change the institution of placement, that means the place of study, unless approved has been provided by the government in writing. Let's talk about the progression report. The student shall submit to the government through the sponsorship administrator the semester or annual academic progress report, failure of which will lead to the cessation of the payment of the maintenance cost and or termination of the sponsorship if not submitted within 30 days of publication of the results. Where the institution requires the student's permission to issue or send report to a third party, grant such permission to the government to receive any such information. Research and internship. The student shall conduct research in his or her country of study or placement, undertake placement, internship training, where such is a compulsory component of his or her program of study, unless otherwise formally exempted by the institution. Such exemption shall be furnished to the government within 14 days of receipt. Communicate to the government timelessly information regarding the commencement and termination of the placement or internship training. Change of address. The student shall notify the sponsorship administrator of change of names and or address from time to time. Let's talk about the pregnancy cases. The government shall under no circumstances be responsible for any cost associated with or arising out of pregnancy of the student. Where the student falls pregnant, she shall notify the government in writing of the pregnancy within the first trimester. That means the first 3 months of pregnancy. Failure to notify the government shall result in the government terminating the sponsorship of the student. The student is guaranteed sponsorship after delivery of the child in Botswana, subject to the student's acceptance to the institution and upon certification by a medical doctor of the student's medical fitness to resume studies. Marriage. The student shall inform the government of any marriage contract he or she has entered into during the tenure of his agreement. Notwithstanding such marriage, the student shall complete the program of study without interruption and shall comply with all terms and conditions of the agreement. The government shall in no way be liable for the payment of any cost of the marriage or any cost arising out of such marriage. Completion of studies. Upon completion of studies, the student shall complete and submit to the sponsorship administrator the government completion form as part of clearing procedures. Notify the government in writing, by hand delivery or registered mail with a reasonable period of time, however, not later than 30 days of his or her employment, and of any subsequent changes of his or her employment for the duration of this agreement. Breach. Where the student at any time during the currency of his agreement fails or omits to fulfill any terms, conditions and or obligations binding on him or her, the government shall claim immediately repayment of all monies expended on her studies under this agreement. The student shall reimburse the government all costs and expenses incurred by the government in enforcing or attempting to enforce any claim or loss resulting from breach by the student in this agreement. Termination of sponsorship. The government reserves the right to terminate the sponsorship where the student fails to sit for or undergo any qualifying examinations. The government receives an unsatisfactory report from the institution on the conduct, work, and progress of the student, which indicates that the student is not likely to successfully complete the program of study. The government receives a medical report which indicates that the student is permanently unfit to continue with the program of study because of illness. The student changes his or her program of study or institution without the written consent of the government. The student unilaterally withdraws from the program of study or wishes to relinquish government sponsorship for any reasons whatsoever. The student is involved in substance abuse and or criminal activities. The student is involved in matters of misconduct which include but is not limited to unacceptable behavior as determined by the government. The student violates visa conditions and or violation of local laws resulting in criminal convictions. The student fails to submit academic progress report to the sponsorship administrator within 30 days of publication of results. The student has been excluded by the institution and the government determines that the student does not comply with the terms and conditions of this agreement. Termination of this agreement. The agreement shall be terminated under but not limiting to any of the following circumstances: upon discharge by the student of all his or her obligations and liabilities under this agreement, and death of the student during studies. Repeat sponsorship. Repeat sponsorship is not an entitlement and shall be granted at the discretion of the government upon receipt of an application for such by the student. The cost and expenses incurred by the government during a repeat period shall be added to the student loan. Requirements for the repeat, reset, and retake applications. Requirements for reinstatement sponsorship. The student should submit application entailing date of previous sponsorship, at what institution and which program, date of sponsorship termination or withdrawal, reasons for termination or withdrawal, financial statement from the current institution as proof of payment if student was under private sponsorship, most recent full official academic record or transcript, supporting letter from the institution stating the student's current academic status and the expected completion date of the program, monitoring and evaluation form obtainable from the Ministry of Education website or the TEF and regional education officers. Requirements for repeat sponsorship. Students' detailed application letter should contain the current admission letter from the institution indicating the program of study, the year of study, the duration of the program, the full official academic record or transcript from the previous institution, the monitoring and evaluation form. Requirements for retake sponsorship. The students should, in their application, entail the readmission letter from the institution listing the courses to be retaken and stating the period of such retakes, the number of new modules to be taken along the retakes, expected completion date of the program, the full official academic record or transcript, the student entailing application letter, and the monitoring and evaluation form. The requirements for extension sponsorship. The student should bring the supporting letter from the institution stating the duration of the extension as well as reasons for such extensions, the full official academic record or transcript, the student detailed application letter, and the monitoring and evaluation form. Lastly, let's look at the requirements for the resit or supplementary examination sponsorship. The student should bring along, when applying, the readmission letter from the institution listing the courses to be reset, supplemented, and stating the specific dates of such resets or supplementary, the full academic record or transcript, the student's detailed application letter, and the monitoring and evaluation form. Let's look at the people who are eligible for this application re-sponsorship. All Botswana citizens, the students who are currently studying and have never benefited from either reset, a retake, a repeat, or extension sponsorship for the same modules. The student will not be allowed more than 6 retakes or resets during the entire study period. The student should take note of the following. Meeting the requirement does not necessarily guarantee sponsorship. There will be limited spaces available for the retakes, repeats, for which the student will compete. Applicants are open to students who have been previously or are currently under sponsorship. Students who will not have received their academic results by the closing date will be eligible to apply only in the next academic cycle, otherwise they may sponsor themselves. Any clarity concerning your sponsorship contract, please do not hesitate to come to DTEF to ask your sponsor, and to all the students across all different institutions, read your loan agreement and understand it. Lastly, let me wish you all the good luck in your studies and study well.
My name is Wakan Sabatai. I am a finance officer in the disbursement unit, which its responsibilities are to control, process and monitor all the expenses that are related to government-sponsored students. Among the other things that we do, we pay tuition fees, we pay student monthly allowances, we record and monitor expenditure allocation for student sponsorship, we keep records of all the students who have been sponsored by the government. At the same time, we allocate funds to education attaches for the students who are sponsored outside the country. One thing that one has to highlight is there are some certain procedures that are supposed to be followed before a student can actually access the entitlements. One thing that is supposed to happen is that a student should have an active bank account, which is normally opened by our unit here. What happens is that after a student has been placed, the list is extracted from the system and sent to the bank. Currently we are contracted to, or we have contracted FNB to take care of that. Then FNB would open bank accounts for the students, and then from there it will send messages to students to go and collect their cards and send the names to DTF, whereby we would then wait for the registers from the institution so that we can pay the allowances into their accounts. I have to emphasize that having a bank account alone does not guarantee that a student would get an allowance. The student should have at the same time registered with the institution. The reason being that a student can be sponsored but decide to stay at home. So if we are to pay without having a registration list from the institution, then we might find that we pay students who are at home. Now, we have got two sets of entitlements that are given to the students. We have the entitlements for the locally placed students. We have other entitlements for the externally placed student, that is the student who study outside our country. Now, these, for the locally sponsored students, we pay them off-campus allowance, which covers meals, accommodation, and transport. We pay on-campus allowance, where in some instances it would cover toiletry. In other instances, it will cover both toiletry and meals. We pay book allowance once per academic year. We pay stationery once per academic year. We also cover special equipment, whereby if there are special cases, an institution would communicate that to us, and then we look at the requests. After assessing the requests, we can accede to it or decline it. We also pay research and attachment allowance, and I have to highlight that this should be core components of the program. This is to say, for us to be able to cover research or to cover an attachment, it should be something that would earn credits, and a student would not graduate if he has not done that. We also cover spectacles, which we do it once in 2 years. And I have to mention that also we don't cover the full cost of the classes. We only pay 450 pula. Now, if I have to elaborate more on these entitlements, you would find that the off-campus allowance, currently we pay 1,420 pula, which covers transport, accommodation, and meals. And this is paid monthly to student accounts. We do also pay the on-campus students. We have two sets of on-campus students. There are those who the institution provide meals to them. There are those that, although they reside on campus, they have to find their own meals. So for those ones who are on full board, these are the ones that normally get their meals from the institution. We only pay 150 pula. And then for those who reside on campus but are supposed to find meal for themselves, we pay 158 pula, 40 tebe. And then when you add it to the 150 of toiletry, it adds up to 1,208, 40 tebe. The stationery allowance, it's 300. And then the book allowance for the science courses, it's 3,500. And then for any other course and other diploma courses that do not belong to science, we pay 2,500. For research, we pay, for diploma programs, for the IHS we pay 450, and then other institutions we pay 600. For degree programs, still under research project, we pay 2,000, and then for master's program we pay 4,500. We then have uniform or protective clothing, which we normally pay 1,200 for first years, and then for subsequent years we pay 600. Still on the local placement entitlements, we look at the attachment allowances. Now, you would find that for the attachment allowances, you would have cases where the students do their attachment within the institution, and then there will be cases where the student will need accommodation in the institution but doing attachment outside the institution. There would also be a case where the student would then have to relocate to go and do attachment far from where the institution is. Now, if we look at the students who do attachment within the institution, those students only, those who do attachment within the institution, the on-campus who do attachment within the institution, they are only paid meal allowance. The reason being that accommodation is offered by the institution. And by the way, I have to emphasize that normally when students go for attachment, if the student has to reside in the school or in the institution residence, the university has to send DTF a request to say the following students would need accommodation during vacation. Then DTF would write a letter of authority to say yes, to give UB a go ahead to say yes, you can accommodate them. Then you would bill us. So in that, you find that those who are given accommodation within the UB or within the institution, and they do the attachment in the same institution, they are paid only the meal allowance because DTF would cover accommodation. So there will be those who do attachment outside the institution while they reside in the institution. Those ones, they are paid 55 pula 28 tebe per day, which covers meals and transport. And then for a student who was on campus but decided to do attachment far from where the institution is located, let us say for argument's sake or for example, the institution is in Gaborone and the student decided to go and do attachment in Hansi. That one, the student is paid 70 pula 28 tebe per day. The 78 pula 28 tebe per day covers meals, transport, and accommodation. And there is also a student who would have been residing off campus and goes for attachment also. Now, the one who is attached within the locality where the institution is located, the student only receives 1,420, the normal monthly stipend that the student is always paid. The reason being that there is no extra cost that the student incurs because the attachment place would be in a place where the institution is also located. But if a student is attached far from the location where the institution is located, in that case the student is paid 35 pula per day, which covers accommodation and transport over and above the monthly stipend of 1,420. The reason for paying the 35 pula is that the student can find a temporary accommodation while the student still maintains the accommodation that he has been using all along. And then one thing that needs to be highlighted is that this attachment, as I have mentioned before, it should form a core component of the program, whereby the student would not be able to graduate if he has not done such an attachment. Now, moving on to the external entitlements. We pay the settlement allowance once per the entire period of the study of the child. We also pay incidental traveling allowance once per the entire period of the study. We pay the transportation at the beginning, at the completion of the program to and from the country of study. We also pay the departure and luggage allowance for returning students. We pay the study permits and we cover up the visas. We also have the medical insurance, and this medical insurance should have been contracted by the government of Botswana on behalf of the students. I think it's also important to highlight that if by any chance the student damages the passport or loses the passport, all these costs of securing a study permit and securing a visa, the student has to pay for himself or herself. Now, in conclusion, I would just like to emphasize that the student must always be prudent in a way they handle these allowances, because it's not enough, and if a student uses it carelessly, there might be a situation where the student finds him or herself suffering beyond what she could be living. And then the other thing also, I have to emphasize that these bank accounts that are normally opened by DTEP on behalf of the students are purely for allowances. The government will not be held accountable for a situation where a student enters into a contract or goes to a pawn shop to secure some loans, and then after that whoever offered the student that services then has to deduct the money directly from the account. So if a student wishes to engage in other activities or other transactions, then the best solution would be for that student to open him or herself a bank account without engaging or involving the sponsor. Thank you very much.
My name is Stephen Kiaragwa. I'm the Principal Accounts Officer in the Loans Recovery Division. In the loans recovery, we collect the government monies from beneficiaries of government sponsorship in form of tertiary education loans. The government started sponsoring students for tertiary education in 1973 until now. But from 1973 up to the 31st of March 1995, the government was operating through a scheme which was called the bursaries. The bursaries was the one which we used to call the bonded student recoveries. From April, 1st of April 1995, the government started operating with a scheme which is called the grant loan scheme, which we are operating through it even up to date. Now, in the loans recovery, we collect monies from all the beneficiaries of these sponsorships. The bursary scheme was calculated by multiplying the 5% by the initial salary of the beneficiary multiplied by the number of years. For example, if the beneficiary has been sponsored for 5 years, we will multiply the 60 months, multiply it by the initial salary, multiply it by the 5%. That's where we get the total loan that the beneficiary has to pay. Under the grant loan scheme, the extent of the payment is determined by the program. The grant loan scheme has been categorized into 5 categories of courses. The category 1 programs, the beneficiaries under this program are given 100% grant on everything. These are the programs areas with critical human resource shortage. Let me give the examples of the category 1 programs, which I can say is those science courses like doctors, engineers, professional accountants, those kind of courses. The category 2 programs, under these programs we have courses which you say are of the manpower shortage, which by then were the courses that were not attractive to students. These courses we are talking about those of nurses, teachers, those courses. Under this category, we say we give the student 100% of 100% grant on tuition costs. The tuition cost entails the tuition fees, the book allowance, the attachment allowance, and the project allowance. Those are part of the tuition costs. Then under the maintenance, we give the beneficiary 50% as a grant, and he or she is supposed to pay 50% of the maintenance costs as a loan. The category 3 programs, these are programs that we say they satisfy or they develop the market, or they balances the demand and the supply. These courses develop market, courses like marketing, courses like management, those kind of courses. Under this category, the beneficiary is given 100% grant on tuition, and he or she is supposed to pay 100% under maintenance as a loan. Then the category 4, these are programs that we say they benefit the society and the economy. Programs programs like humanities, programs like media and journalism, those kind of programs. Under this category, we give the student only 50% grant on tuition costs. Then he or she is supposed to pay 50% loan from the tuition cost and 100% loan under the maintenance costs. Then we have the category 5. The programs under the category 5 are the ones which we say they only benefited the individual. These courses we normally say that the arts programs. Arts programs, we mean the music, dog training, horse riding, those kind of courses. Because these courses only benefit the individual, we say we require the student to pay 100% loan on both tuition and maintenance, or I can say 100% loan on everything. However, there are some instances or situations no matter category, those kind of situations we will require a 100% loan of that on everything of that. We have the repeats, we have the retakes, we have the receipts. If a student happen to repeat, we will require 100% loan of that repeat year or 100% of that retake, then plus the loan. So we encourage students to study diligently so that they do not repeat. There is the termination. If a student happen to terminate sponsor, or we happen to terminate sponsorship of student, we will require the student to pay 100% loan from the first day until the day sponsorship terminate. Then there is withdrawal. whereby the student feels it's from the student that he feels he wants to withdraw from studies. If it happens that the student withdraws from sponsorship, we will require him or her to pay 100% loan from the day at the sponsorship until the day withdraw sponsorship. There is also overpayments, where sometimes it happens that student can be overpaid, maybe getting double allowances a month. So even this one, we will require the student to bring back that overpayment as a 100% loan. These are the ones that we do not categorize. Then after completion of studies, whereby after the student graduates, we expect the student to come to us and fill the student completion form, and we will attach it with the certificate so that we can categorize the program that the student graduates with. Because we normally categorize with the completing course, because a student can start with a different course, and during the training he or she will keep on changing courses, but we categorize with the graduating course. Now after that, when the student finds employment, the student has to, by then is a beneficiary now, he has to come to us to report her whereabouts, so that we can collect the money from him or from her. Employment, here we define employment as a, maybe let me say, government employment, whereby there are the ones in central government, there are the ones in local government, which are the local authorities, councils and land boards. There is the private and parastatal employment, and there is self-employment. So we recover from all these kind of employments. Then we will give the beneficiary a 3 months gracing period, and he or she is supposed to pay back the loan from the 4th month. It is very, very important to pay the loan in time. Very important. Some disadvantages of not paying the loan in time are that, one, there is a possibility of deducting more installment than if he or she has come in that 4th month, so that we have to recover that loan in a short period. When someone retires or resigns from where he is, we will recover the money from, or we will recover the loan, the whole loan, from the terminal benefits or from the contractual benefits. Then when it happens that the beneficiary dies, then we will also deduct the whole loan from the terminal benefits or from the contractual benefits.
Our biggest challenge as the Department of Tertiary Education Financing is those students who get terminated from sponsorship and come back to seek re-sponsorship. On average, we get 5,000 such students per annum, and this is a huge cost to government. If you were to cost this, or these 5,000 students, you will find that 85 million goes towards the payment of their allowances per annum, and also 200 million will go towards paying for their tuition, a total of 285 million bula per annum. This amount could go a long way in ensuring that more Botswana students who complete Form 5 could also be given the opportunity to access tertiary education. Thank you.